The sun had barely risen when Emily was jolted awake by the clatter of pots and pans downstairs. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, her heart sinking. It was Saturday, the one day she dreamed of sleeping in, of sipping her coffee in peace. But then came the sound of laughter, her sister-in-law's unmistakable laugh, followed by the front door opening again and the thud of more footsteps. Her home, she realized with a sigh, wasn't really hers on weekends anymore. Emily dragged herself out of bed and padded down the hallway, her hair still a mess, her sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. She stopped in the doorway to the kitchen, where chaos reigned. Her mother-in-law was already at the stove, stirring something in a pot like she owned the place. The counter was covered in grocery bags she hadn't bought. Her father-in-law had the TV blaring in the living room. Two of her nieces had taken out every board game from the closet, scattering pieces across the floor. Emily forced a smile, the kind you put on when you're trying to be polite but your chest feels heavy. "Morning," she said softly. "Good morning," her mother-in-law beamed back. "We thought we'd surprise you. I brought everything to make my famous stew, you can rest today." Emily nodded, grateful in theory, but all she wanted was her quiet kitchen, her own coffee mug, her own rhythm. She slipped past them, poured herself coffee, and sat at the edge of the counter, feeling invisible in the house she and her husband had worked so hard to buy. They were a good family, loving, generous, loud, and yet every weekend felt like she was hosting a party she hadn't planned. And as she sat there, listening to the noise around her, a thought formed in her chest like a whisper. How long can I keep pretending this is okay? The following weekend was worse than usual. Emily had spent the entire week at work dealing with deadlines, dreaming of a Saturday where she could curl up with a book and just breathe. But by 9 a.m., her living room was full again, kids running around, in-laws debating loudly over what show to watch, her sister-in-law rearranging things in the kitchen to make it more efficient. Emily tried to keep a smile on her face as she wiped down the counter for the third time. But inside, something was cracking. Then it happened, the moment that tipped her over the edge. She overheard her husband's brothers in the backyard talking about next weekend's cookout. "Let's do it here again," one of them said. "It's always easier at your place." They didn't ask. They didn't even mention it to her. They just assumed, because that's what they'd always done. Emily's hands froze on the dish towel. Her heart pounded. Her throat felt tight. She turned to find her husband in the hallway, balancing a tray of drinks. "Can we talk?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked surprised but nodded, following her into their bedroom and closing the door behind them. Emily didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just stood there, clutching the towel, her voice breaking as she finally said what she had swallowed for years. "I can't live like this anymore." Her husband frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily took a shaky breath. "This house doesn't feel like our home. Every weekend, it's like we're hosting a party we never agreed to. I never get to rest. I never get quiet. I love your family, but I feel like I don't exist here. I feel like I'm disappearing." Her husband's face softened. For the first time, he saw how tired she looked, not just physically, but deep down. "I didn't know it was this hard on you," he admitted quietly. Emily nodded, tears finally welling up. "I need something to change. I need us back. I need to feel like this is our home, not just everyone's hangout spot." There was a long silence. Then, slowly, her husband set the tray down and reached for her hand. "Okay," he said. "Then let's fix this. Together." And for the first time in years, Emily felt a flicker of hope, like maybe she wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Emily woke up Monday with a new sense of resolve. For years, she had swallowed her discomfort, waiting for someone to notice how much she was hurting. Now she knew, if things were going to change, it had to start with her. All week, she quietly worked on the house. She packed away the giant 12-seat dining table that always seemed to invite a crowd, replacing it with a smaller, cozier one just for her and her husband. She moved the extra chairs into storage, reclaimed the guest room as a reading nook, and added small, personal touches to every corner: candles, framed photos, a throw blanket she had never dared to use before. It wasn't just a makeover. It was a message: this is our home. By Friday night, she stood in the middle of the living room and looked around, heart pounding. The house felt lighter, warmer, like it finally belonged to her. The next day, when the doorbell rang and the family began to pile in, their cheerful chatter filling the entryway, they all stopped short. The space looked different, more intimate, less like the open gathering hall they were used to. "Wow," her sister-in-law said slowly, looking around. "Did you change things?" Emily smiled nervously, clutching her mug. "Yes. I needed to make it feel like home again." Her husband stepped forward, standing beside her. "We wanted to talk to everyone," he said gently. "We love you, you know we do, but we need a little more space. We need weekends that are just ours sometimes. It's not that we don't want you here, we just need balance." The room was silent for a moment. A few of the siblings exchanged surprised glances. Her father-in-law cleared his throat. "We didn't realize you felt that way." Emily's voice was steady but soft. "I was afraid to say anything because I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I was starting to lose myself, and I can't let that happen. I want you in our lives, but I also want to feel like this is truly my home." There was tension in the air, the kind that comes when people have to face something uncomfortable. But Emily didn't back down. She stood tall, her husband's hand in hers, ready for whatever came next. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she scanned their faces: confusion, surprise, even a flicker of hurt. Then, unexpectedly, her mother-in-law stepped forward. She was quiet, her expression unreadable. "You should have told us sooner," she said softly. Emily's breath caught. Was this anger? Disappointment? But then her mother-in-law's face softened, and tears glistened in her eyes. "I thought I was helping," she said, her voice breaking. "Cooking for you, keeping the house full, I thought it made things easier. But I never stopped to think about what you needed." Emily's eyes welled up. "I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I know how much you love us." Her mother-in-law reached out, taking Emily's hands in her own. "You are family, Emily. You deserve to feel at home in your own house. If we made you feel like a guest, I am so sorry." One by one, the rest of the family nodded. "We never meant to take over," her brother-in-law admitted. "We just love being here." "But we can give you space," her sister-in-law added. The tension began to melt away, replaced by something warm, something healing. Emily's husband squeezed her hand, pride and relief written all over his face. Her mother-in-law smiled through her tears. "From now on, we'll plan visits together. And next weekend, you two should come to our house. We'll cook for you for a change." Emily let out a shaky laugh, the kind that comes after holding your breath for far too long. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but full of emotion. "This means more than you know." And just like that, what could have been a bitter confrontation turned into a moment of connection, a turning point for the whole family. Several months later, the rhythm of life felt completely different. Emily and her husband sat in the car, parked outside his parents' house, carrying a bottle of wine and a store-bought pie, their small contribution to dinner. She took a deep breath, but this time it wasn't to brace herself, it was to savor the peace she felt. Inside, the house was buzzing with familiar voices, but it didn't feel like an invasion anymore. It felt like an invitation. As soon as they walked in, Emily's mother-in-law wrapped her in a hug. "I'm so glad you're here," she said warmly. "Dinner's almost ready, and I saved you the comfiest chair." Emily laughed, touched by the gesture. The evening unfolded gently, with everyone pitching in, setting the table, clearing dishes, sharing stories. There was no chaos, no unspoken resentment, just family being together in a way that felt balanced and respectful. At one point, Emily caught her husband watching her from across the table, a quiet smile on his face. After dessert, he leaned close and whispered, "You know, I think this is the happiest I've ever seen you at one of these dinners." Emily smiled, her chest warm. "Because I don't feel like I'm disappearing anymore. I feel at home. Everywhere." Later that night, as they drove home under the glow of streetlights, Emily rested her head against the window, feeling lighter than she had in years. Taking that first step, setting boundaries with love instead of anger, had changed everything. Not just her weekends. Not just her marriage. But her family. Because sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is speak your truth, and trust that love will rise to meet it.